Oh, hi, Year 10s. Right, here's your lesson 3 on Macbeth for today. And today we're going to be looking at Act 1, Scene 7, but not the whole scene. We've looked at most of the scene already. We're just going to be looking at one speech that Macbeth performs at the beginning of this scene because it's really, really important to his character development. What I need you to do now, though, is to pause this video in a second because I've got a couple of tasks that you need to do first. I'm going to put links underneath in the description so you can click on those links and do the 2 tasks that I want you to do first. So the first task is up on this page. You can see what you need to do. You need to go to a website called sparknotes.com. And there's a section on SparkNotes called No Fear Shakespeare, and you need to find the Macbeth page. When you get to the Macbeth page, you can see little scene summaries, and just up here you can see the scene summaries that I want you to have a read through. So scene 4 we did last time. Click on scene 5 and then do the same for scene 6 and scene 7. And what you'll find when you click on there is it takes you through to this. And on the left, that's the original text. That's all the Shakespearean language down the left there. And on the right is a modern version, kind of side by side. So you can read the Shakespearean version, then the modern version to try and understand it. Okay, so you can see there that you can just kind of scroll through that act and scene and then go back here and do the same for scene 6 and scene 7 that we're going to be looking at now. You can see also they give you some really, really useful kind of links to other videos and to blogs. Absolutely brilliant for your revision. So what I'm asking you to do really is some revision on scene 5, scene 6 and scene 7. If you go through and read those, it should probably take you between about 10 and 15 minutes to do that. The second thing that I want you to do, it's my favourite, I want you to watch on YouTube this scene. And we've got one of my favourites. It's the old kind of black and white version with Dame Judi Dench and Sir Ian McKellen. So before you watch that, a little bit of key vocab for you. So you can pause and copy this down into your notes, into your book, if you like. So what we're going to be seeing today is Macbeth performing a soliloquy, or Sir Ian McKellen in a minute performing a soliloquy. And what a soliloquy is a monologue. The character on the stage speaks to him or herself. And the idea is they know that they're not being heard by the other characters. So when they're doing that soliloquy, the speech that they give, it reveals their innermost thoughts to the audience. And soliloquy comes from Latin, and it's quite easy to work out what it means actually. So loque, that bit there, that means to speak. So sometimes really posh word for someone who's really, really chatty is loquacious, someone who talks a lot. And then sol means on your own, so like solo. So it means solo speaking. And that's exactly what it means. But it's different from a monologue, because a monologue, another character might be listening to. And for example, whereas a soliloquy, it's where you speak your thoughts out loud. Okay, so in Shakespeare's plays, every character reveals their true feelings. In soliloquies, there is one play called Othello, and there's a really evil character in that called Iago. He is the only one of Shakespeare's characters who tells lies in their own soliloquies, and that reveals kind of what an evil man he is. Okay, so again, here's the link. My face is covering half the link, which isn't very useful, but I'm going to put it in the description below. So if you want to watch McKellen perform just the soliloquy, you just need to watch the first 2 minutes of that. I would highly suggest that you watch the rest of the clip to revise the whole scene. Judi Dench is absolutely magnificent in this scene, and it's well worth watching the whole thing just to make sure that you remember what's going on. And we haven't watched Dench do this scene in class, and she's really good, really, really good. So stop this video, go and watch Dench and McKellen, come back to me, be ready to do some annotation. I will see you in about 25 minutes. Bye for now. Right then, let us have a look at this little scene here. That was meant to be deleted. Let's put it down here. Okay, I've chunked it down into 3 sections as we're going to look really, really closely at this scene. So this is how Macbeth starts off. If it were done when 'tis done, then 'twere well it were done quickly. If the assassination could trammel up the consequence and catch with his success, that but this blow might be the be-all and the end-all here. But here, upon this bank and shoal of time, we'll jump the life to come. Right, so if we have a little look at this, let's start off at the top. So if we see here, Macbeth, he can't call the deed that he plans to do, he can't call it murder. He knows that what he's going to do is unjustified. When we go later on in the scene, we can see that he knows it's unjustified. But having a look here, he will call it anything but murder. He calls it if it were done. When 'tis done, it is done. 'Twere well, it were done quickly. So 3 lots of it down there, he calls the murder. Then he calls the murder the assassination. So if we think about modern, maybe spy thrillers that we might watch nowadays, when you think of an assassination, it's normally someone who's very, very professional killer who is paid to go and murder someone. So why is he calling it an assassination? Who is paying him? Well, later on, he suggests that it is vaulting ambition who's paying for the assassination, or who's trying to get the assassination done. So it's as if he's personifying his own ambition as a kind of a pushy woman who wants to he wants to pay Macbeth to kill King Duncan, the assassination. And then a little bit further down, again in the yellow, he calls the murder this blow, but this blow might be the be-all and the end-all. So five different words he's used for murder, and totally avoided using the word murder. He is a professional killer, he's a soldier, but normally what he does is justified and justifiable. And if we have a look here, I don't think it's any coincidence that Shakespeare has used all this sibilance. So if you remember, sibilance is the repetition of the S or the sh sound, and you can hear it all the way through here. Assassination, consequence, success. And to me, it's like Shakespeare is creating a really whispery tone. Even though Macbeth is talking in soliloquy, so he knows that the other characters on the stage can't hear him, this is just between him and the audience, it's almost as if he's trying to whisper his own thoughts in his own head. He's trying to suppress those thoughts, he's trying to quieten them down. And we'll see, obviously we know, we've seen the play, that he is a man with a really, really troubled mind. So here we see his thoughts worrying him again. He's trying to quieten down his own thoughts. So this next little line, I just kind of tell you what it means. If you've read No Fear, you'll know what it means already. He says, if the assassination could trammel up the consequence and catch with his success, but that this blow might be the be-all and the end-all here, it would be fine. He's saying that I would be absolutely happy to do this murder if I knew that I'd just do the murder and that was the end of it, that there'd be no kind of consequences, it wouldn't come back on me. It wouldn't come back on me now, and it wouldn't come back on me and punish me in the afterlife, so heaven or hell or purgatory or whatever. So that's what that means. Down here, in all the little bits that I've highlighted in the light green, so trammel, catch, bank, shoal, not so much time, but those 4 words there. What's going on is this is a fishing metaphor. So in this soliloquy, we see actually 2 different animal metaphors being used, and this first one is a fishing metaphor. So just to go through it, the noun a trammel is an archaic, an old-fashioned word for a fishing net. So first thing he's saying is, if the assassination could trammel up the consequence, if I could kind of stop myself from having any consequences to this murder with a fishing net, if I could kind of capture it in a fishing net, it would be safe. Okay, and then catch with his deceased success. So again, it's this idea that he's casting out the line and trying to catch the fish, but deceased, like the death of Duncan, should just bring success, because like the death is just going to be captured, caught like a fish on a line, and put to one side. But then he goes on, and this is kind of more about the river down here. So the bank of the river, that's the side of the river. So if you were fishing, that's where you would sit to fish. And the shoal is another word for the shallows in the river or the lake or the sea. And the shallows lead out to the depths. And in a way, what Shakespeare is trying to say here, that life is like sitting on the bank of a river. That's like your life. So you'll do that just for a short amount of time, but then the afterlife is kind of like going into the shoal and then going out into, eventually into the deep sea. So sitting on the bank is for a short time, but going in the shallows and going out to sea, that's going to go on for eternity. The afterlife will go on for eternity. So if you condemn yourself to a life in purgatory, or what Macbeth is doing, a life in hell, then that is a very, very long consequence for the crimes that you do on earth. Okay, so that's what that one's all about. What you want to do now is pause and get some notes down. So I'll see you for the next little section in a second. Okay, so looking at the next section of this soliloquy, this is what Macbeth says. Macbeth says, but in these cases, so what he means by these cases is where you commit a murder on earth, we still have judgment here. That we but teach bloody instructions, which, being taught, return to plague the inventor. This even-handed justice commends the ingredients of our poisoned chalice to our own lips. He's here in double trust. First, as I am his kinsman and his subject, strong both against the deed, then as his host, who should, against his murderer, shut the door, not bear the knife myself. So here you can see, in the green, we still have judgment here. He's worried about the afterlife, as we've seen on the previous little bit, but actually right now he's worried about being caught trying to kill King Duncan and being punished in the here and now. So that's his immediate worry. Yep, okay, we'll worry about the afterlife when we get there. But actually, we still have judgment here. At the moment, actually, I'm more worried about getting caught now. And he goes on to say, but we teach bloody instruction, which being taught return to plague the inventors. What he's saying here is, if we teach violence to people, if we show people violence, that violence is going to come back and get you. And it's this kind of idea when the student becomes a master, in a way, isn't it? It's kind of Shakespearean karma, like what comes around goes around, what goes around comes around. But it also got me to thinking that perhaps this line, what we teach bloody instruction, which being taught return to plague the inventor, could it be foreshadowing Banquo's ghost's appearance in Act 3 at the banquet? He had Banquo murdered brutally in cold blood, and then Banquo can't rest, and he comes back to wreak his revenge at Macbeth's important party. And then the one I've got highlighted in pink here, basically he's saying exactly the same thing again. He's making the same point again, but he's changing. So whereas this one is almost kind of like a teacher-student kind of metaphor, this one's like a poison metaphor. So he's saying, we gave them the ingredients for the poison chalice, and now we're having to put that poison and drink it ourselves. So it's like, well, what comes around goes around, the same thing again. So he goes from philosophizing to thinking about King Duncan specifically here. So he's here in double trust. Notice he doesn't name Duncan, does he? It's just he's that vague pronoun usage again. He's here in double trust. And we've noticed that throughout the play, we have reference to the word double, don't we? Remember, Lady Macbeth said not that very long ago in the play, everything's done double. The witches double toil and trouble. They're doing everything double. We have 3 and 3 makes 9 in the witches spell, so we're kind of doubling up and tripling up on those numbers. And here we get this double. He's here in double trust. So it's like King Duncan doesn't just trust me once, he trusts me twice. Actually, although I've labelled them once and twice here, it's almost 3 times, 3 times trust, really, although he says double. So why is Duncan at Macbeth's castle in double trust, and why should Duncan feel double safe staying with Macbeth? Have a little think about that. So pause it, have a think about that. I will give you the answer in a few seconds. Right, so it says first I'm his kinsman and his subject. So kinsman means it's the old cousin again, isn't it? They're related by blood. So if you're related to someone by blood, you certainly ought to be able to trust them with your life. And then still number 1, according to Macbeth, I'm his subject. So he's my king, and I'm the person who kind of looks up to him. He's in charge of me. Then Macbeth's number 3, I think, really, as his host. So he's saying that because I'm hosting him in my castle, I should be keeping the murderers out. Against his murderers shut the door, not bear the knife myself. So I should be actually putting on extra protection for Duncan, not killing him myself. As a host, I should be looking after him as a good host. Right then, so last little bit of the soliloquy, and I promised you some more animal images, and here we go. We've got a horsey image here. So before we get to the horsey image, let's have a look. Still thinking about King Duncan. And if you have a look, this is something I do in your work if I get a bit cross with it. Sometimes I will do a great big line down the side of your work and write, all one sentence, are you sure? And that's what Shakespeare's done here. This is all one sentence. Let's have a think about why. Besides, this Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek, has been so clear in his great office, that his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued against the deep damnation of his taking off. And pity, like a naked newborn babe, striding the blast, or heaven's cherubim horsed upon the sightless couriers of the air, shall blow the horrid deed in every eye, that tears shall drown the wind. That's a sentence and a half, and I really had to breathe when I got to those commas. And I would say that Macbeth is being extremely hyperbolic here. He's really, really exaggerating. And what he's also doing is bringing out this contrast between his own behaviour that he's plotting and Duncan's behaviour as king. So I think that the reason why that sentence is so long is because Macbeth is hyperbolizing about King Duncan, saying how amazing he is. And I think because he's kind of almost waffling on with this really, really long sentence, it makes it kind of a bit fake. I'm not sure if he's really convinced about it. It's just, again, it's his troubled mind just kind of throwing all these things at him. Let's have a look at this contrast, though. So you can see in the green, I've highlighted where Macbeth says how pure and virtuous Duncan has been. So have a look at those words. He hath borne his faculties so meek. So when Duncan goes about, he's not a boastful, arrogant, showing off kind of man. He's a meek man. He comes across as quite shy, quite self-effacing. He kind of puts himself down. And I think that we see that in both of the video versions that we've watched. So the one with Michael Fassbender in it, and the old Polanski version from 1970. So he does come across as a really quiet, meek man. But me personally, I don't think for a king that the word meek is really flattering. It often goes with meek and mild, and you think of someone who can't stand up for themselves. So here I think Macbeth is kind of meaning it in both of those ways. So he means it in a good, flattering kind of way. Yeah, Duncan is not arrogant. He's not cocky or overconfident. He is a quiet, self-effacing, thoughtful kind of man, but it can mean that he's quite weak and a little bit pathetic as well. However, the next one is more clear, the word clear. So he's been so clear in his great office. So as he's been king, he's made good, clear decisions. He's been really clear in what he desires. So, for example, like the execution of the Thane of Cawdor, it was very clear that he wanted that done, even though he wasn't there to officiate himself. But clear, it can also kind of mean innocence, like perhaps his conscience is clear as well. So you've got that innocence there as well, the clarity and innocence in his great office, that he's not sly, that you can, there's a reason, you can see the reason for him doing everything that he did. And then Macbeth talks about King Duncan's virtues, and that means all the good. So your virtues are all the good things that you do. And he says his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet tongued. And what we've got here is some real heavenly imagery. Okay, so if you read parts of the Bible, this idea that if you are good, you will be looked after by angels, and the angels will trumpet and tell God how good you are, and they will kind of protect you. So Duncan's been so meek, so clear, and he's got so many virtues, so many good points, that these virtues will become angels, or similarly like that. His virtues will be like angels. And here we get the contrast against the deep damnation of his taking off. And taking off means the way that he died, the way that he died. So the way that Macbeth murdered him. And the deep damnation means you're going to get sent to the pits of hell. Okay, so on the one hand, you've got this heavenly image, these angels are similarly about angels, and King Duncan's kind of got a fast track ticket to heaven, accompanied by angels because of all his good characteristics. Whereas Macbeth, the man who took him off, has got a fast track ticket straight to the depths of hell. Okay, then we're back to King Duncan again, and pity like a naked newborn babe. So pity here, so feeling sorry for Duncan for being murdered, and this pity here is being personified, this abstract noun pity. And pity's like a naked newborn babe striding the blast, or heaven's cherubim. So cherubim are a little bit like those what's he called? Like little cupids. So a little kind of baby angel, a cherubim who you see on the ceilings of great big cathedrals and things like that. Heaven's cherubim are going to ride a horse into the air to tell everyone about the horrid deed that Macbeth has done. Okay, so we've got on one hand the virtues are trumpeting like angels. All of Duncan's good points are like angels trumpeting out, sending him straight to heaven. And pity is going to be like a cherubim, kind of telling everybody how horrible Macbeth has been. So it's going to go around saying, everyone, it was Macbeth who did this murder, and wasn't it a horrible thing to do? So again, this contrast between Macbeth's evil and the purity of Duncan. Duncan, pity for Duncan, like a newborn babe. Again, really thinking that innocence of the baby or the heavenly cherubim. And tears shall drown in the wind. So it's kind of like everyone's going to be so upset about King Duncan. They're going to be crying their eyes about, and it'll be like it's kind of raining everywhere, and the wind will get drowned because everyone's crying so much. Hopefully you're beginning to understand what I was talking about when I said that Macbeth is really exaggerating here. He's hyperbolizing. Okay, so And one last thing before we move on to this little Horsey metaphor. Again, he's not calling it a murder. This time it's called the horrid deed. So what have we had so far? It, the assassination, the blow, and the horrid deed. You still won't call it a murder. Anything but murder. Okay, so here's our horse image. I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which all leaps itself and falls on the other. So if you have a look at this picture here, this is a spur just here, and you can see it's kind of like a cowboy boot in this picture. I don't think that Macbeth would have worn a cowboy boot, but this one's a cowboy boot. And this kind of piece of leather and metal gets attached around the boot, and it's got kind of a little sharp spur here, and the rider would use that like to nudge into the horse's side. So Macbeth says, I have no spur. He doesn't have something to encourage the horse to leap over, to prick the sides of my intent. So that's what they do with the spur. But only vaulting, so you can see the horse here is vaulting. The rider is making the horse vault, only vaulting ambition. So if you like, Macbeth sees himself or sees ambition as a rider of a horse. And he's saying that my ambition is like the rider kind of forcing the horse to leap over. But what happens, does Macbeth say, when the horse gets to the other side of the vault? It all leaps itself and falls on the other. So this rider looks really, really confident and is probably going to land beautifully. But in Shakespeare's metaphor here, what's going to happen to the rider or ambition when it gets to the other side? And Macbeth is kind of saying here, my ambition is like the rider, being a bit too cocky, a bit too arrogant, a bit too sure that they can use the spurs. Okay, so I want you to think about those two questions. What will happen to the rider at the other side? And why is that rider ambition being too cocky? And what I'm going to do while you're thinking about that, show you another picture of a spur, because that's quite small and quite faint, that one. So you can see there's the spur and the boot, and they're zoomed right in on there. So that's the spur, and that the rider would use their ankle and kind of prick that into the side of the horse. And that's kind of what Macbeth sees himself as doing. Okay, so did you manage to have a think about this? What's going to happen to the rider? So you can see the rider takes off beautifully, but according to Macbeth, his ambition, his vaulting ambition, is going to overleap itself. It's going to try and jump too high and too far. And then when it gets to the other side, it's going to fall. So the horse is going to fall, and it will probably throw the rider off. So that's what Macbeth thinks is going to happen when he's talked himself out of killing the king. And obviously we know the play, and we know that that's exactly what's going to happen. He does have too much ambition, and he does overstretch himself. He doesn't find satisfaction in being the king. He doesn't enjoy those things that kingship brings him. It just brings him depression, sleepless nights, guilt, terrible mental health troubles. He was too cocky. He didn't need to be king. He wasn't ready to be king, and he does fall. What I'm going to do to finish up is I'm going to give you a model paragraph again, and like we did in the previous lesson, I want you to have a go at annotating this for AO1, AO2 and AO3. In the description underneath, you will find a link to where the document is saved on the Google Drive, on my Google Drive, and you can print that off and fill it in on the sheet, and then go ahead and have a go at writing the essay, which is task number 5, I believe, underneath. And again, I've given you some bullet points so you can think about what you want to write, please. So let's have a look at my model paragraph. This is what I wrote this time. How does Shakespeare present Macbeth's uncertainty in this scene? In Act 1, Scene 7, Shakespeare reveals Macbeth's innermost thoughts to the audience through a soliloquy to highlight his uncertainty about killing King Duncan. At this point in the rising action of the drama, Macbeth faces conflict, but it's definitely internal conflict as he questions his decision to murder King Duncan. Indeed, his uncertainty is revealed in his inability to use precise language to describe the murder. He starts by repeating the vague pronoun it to reference the killing, then calls it the assassination and this blow. As a soldier, the brutal deaths Macbeth caused were justified, fighting righteously for the king. But both Macbeth and the Jacobean audience know that killing Duncan is morally and ethically wrong, as the divine right means the role of king is mandated by God. The noun assassination implies Macbeth is following orders or being paid to do the deed, perhaps by vaulting ambition, an abstract concept that is personified later in the scene. So, pause the video, have a look through that, and see again if you can annotate for AO1, AO2, and AO3. AO1 is being able to use quotations to justify your argument. It's about being able to put your understanding into a fluent and critical essay. AO2 is all about analysing language, form, and structure. It's also about using subject terminology. So language, form, and structure, and using subject terminology. And then finally, AO3 is all about the context in which texts were written. So it could be the historical context, it could be the genre context, or it could be the way that the audience received the play. Okay, so again, you could use some different highlighters, you could use a code, go through and annotate, please. Okay, so your next tasks then you can see on your sheet. So identify and label AO1, 2, and 3. I'm going to go through that with you in a second. I want you to have a go at writing down 3 reasons why my paragraph is good academic writing. So it means why it sounds like a really good essay. And then 5, don't do this now unless you're feeling really, really keen. Kind of save this for like next lesson. I'd like you to have a go at continuing my essay, please. And here are some of the things you could talk about. You could talk about how the use of sibilants creates a whispery tone and how that shows his uncertainty. You could write about his uncertainty about getting caught murdering King Duncan. So right now, not his eternal punishment in heaven or hell, but his punishment now if he gets caught. Then you could write about his uncertainty about what will happen to him in the afterlife. So you could think about that fishing metaphor, about the bank and shoal of time. Then you could have a look at that very, very, very long sentence, that very hyperbolic sentence, how he shows his uncertainty about the evil deed he's about to commit, the evil murder that's going to damn him to hell, versus all of King Duncan's good points. And you could look at the simile there with the cherubim and the seraphim and the angels flying him to heaven, and zoom in on some of those key words, like the word clear and meek, for example. And then finally, is definitely worth thinking about his worries about his reason, his uncertainty about why he wants to commit the murder, the vaulting ambition, and have a go at analysing that horse metaphor. So that's what I want you to do for your essay. But you can come back to this video or just stick with the sheet and you can do that for another probably 40 minutes of work on another day. Okay, so here we go. This is where I saw myself using AO1, AO2, and AO3. So AO1, I'm putting my argument together in a critical style. Shakespeare reveals Macbeth's innermost thoughts. So I'm starting off my argument to highlight his uncertainty. So I'm starting my argument there. His uncertainty is revealed in his inability, and the word indeed, that discourse marker there, moving my argument forward. Inability to use precise language. I've got a range of quotations: the assassination, this blow, vaulting ambition. So I've got those quotations in there, which is part of A01. A02, let's have a look. I've got lots and lots of subject-specific vocabulary here. Soliloquy, rising action, drama, internal conflict. I've got vague pronoun. I've got noun. I've got personified down here. So loads and loads of really useful subject-specific terminology that helps me make my point clearly. Also for AO2, I've been doing some analysis, and up here I've talked about the form, the rising action of the drama. So the fact that it's a drama, and that I know that dramas take the form of the old story Mountain that we looked at last time. So the form is a drama, and the structure has rising action. And part of that structure of rising action for AO2 is the idea of internal conflict. So you can see, as I always say, when you're writing about structure, it's kind of cool because you don't need to remember that many quotes. You just need to remember that something is happening and you can say what it is. So you're talking about his internal conflict. You don't have to quote to prove that he's having internal conflict. The whole scene shows his internal conflict. Okay, and I'm analysing the internal conflict. He questions his decision to murder King Duncan, or evidencing it and analysing it at the same time. Then I'm going to do some good old-fashioned zooming in. He starts by repeating the vague pronoun it and to reference the killing, and he calls it the assassination. And so I'm thinking there that we probably, oh no, we do it down, I'll do it down here. So the noun assassination implies Macbeth is following orders, being paid to do the deed. Okay, so there's my zooming in on the word assassination there. And here, this is my AO3. Macbeth and the Jacobean audience know that killing Duncan's morally and ethically wrong. The divine right means the role of kings is mandated by God. So it's God who chooses who's going to be king. Okay, Duncan gets to choose his own heir. We know that from last time, but once Duncan has chosen his own heir, then God is kind of like the person who has ultimate ownership over that. So you can't just steal the kingship. It has to follow the correct order because of the divine right of kings. But actually that green point there, although that is social and historical context, it's actually also AO2. It's analysis, isn't it? So it's like analysing these two words. Okay, so good luck carrying on the essay. As ever, if you've got any questions about it, pop them in the comments underneath. If there's anything that you didn't understand, then you can send me an email or you can put it in the comments and I will try to answer that for you. But apart from that, good luck and I will see you next lesson.